Okay, cool. We're good to start. So today we're going to do an introduction to DialogFlow. If I can find which, there we go. So DialogFlow, and we're going to create an actions on Google Assistant. But first off, we're going to go through what DialogFlow is, how to use it, and why it even exists. So DialogFlow is a natural language processing tool. It was created in 2010, as mentioned, and it was originally called API AI. At one point, it's called Speak to It. It was just a small startup, but they were doing some good stuff. So Google took note of that, and Google bought them out and has been expanding them ever since. Some really cool expansions have come out of that partnership with Google. Most recently, Google launched, there's actually a paid version. So DialogFlow used to be entirely free. All the free functionality is still there, but the paid version has even more features that they're building out. So I guess that's how they're monetizing it. So natural language processing is an entire field of artificial intelligence. We're not going to go super deep into what that is, but what DialogFlow lets you do is it lets you take, any normal conversational text and extract computer understandable information from it and process those as if it was just, say, any other piece of actual code data, a JSON object. Cool. So you can use it to make your own chatbot or assistant, or just add in language processing abilities to your existing application. So one of the simplest use cases of DialogFlow is to just make a chatbot. But chatbot gets thrown around a lot as a word as to what that even means. So the chatbots people make in DialogFlow, for the most part, are just glorified decision trees. And almost everything does end up being hard-coded, the paths and whatnot. There's not much artificial intelligence going on in there. However, DialogFlow does incorporate some of those buzzwords of machine learning into how they deal with things, in that machine learning is used for the agent, the chatbot, to better understand what the input actually means. So what I mean by that is there are examples of what a user's input would be. You write in those examples, and using those, it learns from that, so that if I said something in the future, it would try and match that to an already given example. And that's where the whole machine learning comes into play. So there's this idea of an intelligent agent, which comes from the whole comp sci field, and that's defined by having the ability to act rationally, which means it can take the appropriate actions for given its goals and circumstances. It's flexible, it's able to learn, and it's able to make appropriate choices given the resources it has. So the reason I say that it's not quite a chatbot and not quite an intelligent agent is because there isn't an incredible degree of flexibility, and it's not able to learn. As you can even see with the Google Assistants that's available already on your Google Home, if you say something and it doesn't understand you, the next time you say that exact same thing, you're going to get the exact same response of, I didn't understand that. So there's no artificial intelligence learning of how do I fix this problem incorporated. Everything is hard-coded in there from the developer. That's why it's more just like a glorified decision tree. And that's an example of what a decision tree looks like, just pulled off of Wikipedia. Given an input, there are potential options one can take, and you go down those paths, and you can go circular, you can go back, and whatnot, as you can see in this example. So, technical architecture of how you actually implement DialogFlow into whatever you're building. So you can build a backend for whatever DialogFlow application you're using Node.js. Node is what they support the most at the moment, but they have SDKs for, they have an Android SDK, PHP SDK, and a bunch of other ones. But at the moment, most people who are building chatbots are using Node just because there's significant amounts of other packages that can help you with your chatbots. Your backend, they actually just recently, thanks to Google, integrated Google Firebase directly into DialogFlow. So previously, whenever we were building things, we would just put up a server on Heroku as our backend, but now you can actually build your backend directly into DialogFlow and just write the backend functions that you need to take place, like maybe make a call to this API and get the data and fulfill it back to DialogFlow. So you can set it up like that directly into DialogFlow, as opposed to creating your own. It takes a lot of stress and work off of a developer's plate. It seems like I've missed some slides. I don't know if I talked to the slide yet, so we'll head back to it. So these are the, this is what the architecture would actually look like. There's two main options as to how you can do it. You can have DialogFlow be your main receptor for all messages, and then it can, as needed for fulfillment of getting more information from a server, send off the messages to a server. So they have one-click integrations on that front, in that if I want to deploy my DialogFlow agent straight to Facebook Messenger, I don't need to touch any of Facebook's API or whatever. It's just a one-click integration where I just put in the Facebook webhook and takes care of everything. The other way that it can be used, though, that can give the the developers more control, is to have your own server that's in the middle. And so you deal with the Facebook Messenger API and you receive those messages, and when you need a response or you need to process a query, you just send that off to DialogFlow. Welcome, welcome. We haven't gone too far in depth. We were just talking about how you can set up DialogFlow in your actual architecture. So you can have DialogFlow be your main thing, in that all the messages from the user go directly to DialogFlow, and DialogFlow, as needed, will hit your server to get information to answer the query, or everything can go through your server, gives you a ton of more control, and you just fulfill, or rather you process your queries using DialogFlow to tell you what they're actually saying. So just talked about this, where you can just build it straight into DialogFlow. You don't need to run your own server. Firebase takes care of that. Cloud Functions, so they only run when they're needed. They're not always running on a server. It just hits one of Google's many big servers. So there are three main ideas with DialogFlow, three main components: intents, contexts, and entities. I'm going to go through each one of these, and then I'll explain what they mean, how they're used, and then at the end of this, we'll make a quick thing using intents, contexts, and entities to show you what it actually means. So the first component of DialogFlow is intents. Intents are the majority of your application. An intent is how the agent determines what to do with an input. I'll go deeper into a specific intent and what it looks like within creating an intent, but this is the general overview. There's two types of intents, just a normal intent, as you can see with these circles, or there's this idea of fallback intents. Fallback intents is how it answers if it doesn't know something. You can make multiple different types of fallback intents to be called within specific contexts, which is another idea we'll get into soon. So intents, this is what an intent actually looks like when you're creating an intent. An intent has a name. You'll see I use a naming structure. This is a structure that I kind of just came up with myself, in that an issue with DialogFlow at the moment is that they don't have enough management tools of all your contexts, all your intents, and categorizing them and whatnot. So if you have a lot of intents, which a proper agent will have upwards of like 20 intents if you are having something that can handle a lot of situations, but it automatically just groups all your intents on this view alphabetically. You can't group them in any way, which is kind of annoying. So I've come up with this convention that's nothing crazy, and I just number them based on a grouping system so that they stick together. So each intent has contexts associated with it, both an input context and an output context. So the contexts are used to guide the situation. I'll go deeper into what contexts are later on, but each intent has 0 to many input contexts and output contexts. And between each context, you're able to remove previous context or add context. So removing context is actually an amazing feature that I discovered pretty late into the game with DialogFlow because it's not mentioned explicitly. So each intent, you give it some examples of a user input, known as a user says. The more examples you give, the better, as it uses its machine learning to build off. Is it too small? Yep. It uses these examples to build up its model, I guess, of what someone says. So whenever an input comes in the future, say, howdy, yo, I'm Bob, right? Doesn't specifically match any of these, but it'll go against all of the inputs it has, and it'll use some threshold level of which one it matches closest to, and you're able to actually manually set, like, it's a 0.8 match out of 1 based on its algorithm as to how sensitive you want it to be, which I think is really cool that you have a toggle over how sensitive you want it to be. And so within, you'll notice that these are highlighted. I didn't actually highlight that. It automatically highlights those in that it's identifying a parameter within what they're saying. So those parameters are known as entities, which I'll be elaborating on soon, are basically just values that you're looking for in their speech. And it uses these to also build further upon its matching, like, hey, did they mention a name entity? You're welcome, teacher. We're just talking about what an intent is and breaking down intents. And then you can further use these entities that you've pulled from their user says in generating your response. Further, you can make these entities required in their speech. So if they say, my name is, but they never give you a name, you can prompt them explicitly to give you a name to proceed past that. And then as I showed, you can just use that. This value, once you move past this, it will get stored within the context. So all the values that DialogFlow picks up get stored in context and are accessible anytime you have that context. So I could go further on the next thing I say to them. I could pull from have name. I could just get the value of have name.name from that context. Any questions at this point?
So the machine learning part is taking your inputs and just giving them some, generating a decision tree. That's the only thing?
Yeah, so the machine learning component is that it, given your inputs, it can match other inputs to your examples.
That just sounds like processing.
Yeah, it's nothing, they don't talk very explicitly about it. It's kind of behind the scenes, and I feel that the usage of words like artificial intelligence and machine learning might be a little beyond what the application actually does, but that's for them. Yeah. So there are two approaches in how you deal with your intents. And it kind of depends on the nature of your application. If your application is an explicit chatbot, then your intents are going to read like a decision tree, right? You got to do this action, then do this action, then do this action. And so you would model your intents after what your agent hopes to be receiving. Get name. Alternatively, you could have your intents named after what your user is hoping to achieve. So I would imagine if I was a Google Home device, right? My intents would be things like play a song off Spotify or find nearest pizza shop, right? So those are the two schemas you can use for generating your intents and your list of intents. And they're obviously interchangeable in that if I'm doing like a pizza shop robot, I could be prepared to deal with random queries that aren't to do with a specific decision tree as well. And so yeah, this is taken straight from their site as to how they explain machine learning. In DialogFlow terminology, your agent uses machine learning algorithms to match user requests to specific intents and uses entities to extract the relevant data from them. So that's what they say on the machine learning section of their site. The next thing we're going to get into are contexts. So contexts, they guide your conversation. They tell you what you have at any given time. But contexts are also used to determine what intents can be matched. So there's a hierarchy in that if you use your context to deter with each intent, you give it an input context, or you can give it no input context. But if you give an intent an input context, that intent will only be matched while in that context, or while you have that context active. This is cool, but the issue that I'm trying to bring up here in that it can only go one way is that if I'm in the middle of getting information from the user, they can call anything else and it could still be matched. So if you have two ways of getting their name, one deeply within a context in the middle of a flow, or one if they're just saying their name, an issue that can arise is it'll match the wrong one. And that's a frustration I've had with managing context, and this idea of context is contexts can whitelist certain intents, like an intent can only be matched in that context, but there's no opposite in that I can set it so that while I'm in this context to only match these intents. It will always be able to match any intent that has no given input intent or context. Sorry.
Does it match the best intent, or does it match a set of?
So, given an input in a certain context, it will try and, what do you mean match the best?
Because
so it generates that number, right? And so yes, it will choose the best one, but it doesn't prefer the one that requires the contexts given. There's no differentiation on their end of this one requires all the context that I have versus this one has no given context. So that can be annoying because there are times where you're going to ask them to give you a value while you're in a certain context, but you might want that value in a situation where you don't have a given context. So this is the sort of hierarchy that I've driven up. So when you have no input context, all intents are matchable that don't have a specific input context.
So if there was an example of that, you could say you had somebody to give you the weather.
Yep.
At the top level, you could say, give me the temperature. And
Yep.
give you the temperature with no current location.
Mm-hmm.
But if you started asking it about, say, a destination that you were going to,
Mm-hmm.
say, you're in some context as to San Francisco, and you say, give me the weather. You expected the weather for San Francisco,
but it might match your original of Vancouver.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that's a great
It
example.
doesn't prioritize.
Right, it doesn't prioritize
By
what's,
granularity.
which is unfortunate, but I hope that's something they fix. So you're right. So if I say I'm in San Francisco, and then I have the context of have city, and then if I had two different intents made, one which is just a generic get weather, and one is get weather when have city or something, and I just said, what's the weather? It might just give me the one that requires no input context and take the original whatever my city was.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's it for context thus far. Further questions about what a context is? Cool.
Can context be mutually exclusive? Like, can you have a context and not have another one?
You can't. That's the problem. Yeah, you can't. I guess, yeah, it's unfortunate, but you can do that manually if you were using your backend, right? If you did the architecture where you have the server in the middle, you're able to see with every message all the context available right now, so you could implement that yourself. You have a lot of control actually when you're using this type of architecture of having your server in the middle, because you get all the information about where the conversation currently is in their current session. You get how many messages they've sent, when the most recent message was, all their previous queries as well you can see, and all their previous contexts.
So that way you'd be able to solve the weather issue.
Exactly, that is how you could in your application, if the intent is get weather, then you could see, do I have this context? I have city. Sure, right here, right there. So that's how you deal with that. Cool. Context can be removed, as I mentioned. So once you get something, you can just remove a specific context. Now, entities, which is the last core component that you need to know about when trying to make something for DialogFlow. Entities are the types of values that get matched and recognized in the user says. There are two types of entities, system-defined and developer-defined. DialogFlow comes built in with a ton of predefined entities, things like address, given names, city names, and even more that you can check out, which are really helpful because not only are they built out pretty elaborately, but they're also translated, so you can use them in, there's like support for like 30 different languages on that front, so that's really helpful. Or, as a developer, you can define your own entities. Say for this example, ice cream flavors, I defined a bunch of ice cream flavors. And then I'll talk about what define synonyms is. That's pretty straightforward in that I can define synonyms. If I have chocolate, if they said choco, it would also match to the parameter of chocolate. Allow automated expansion is a bit more interesting. Allowing automated expansion, so when I give a user says of say, I want a scoop of chocolate, it'll match chocolate to my entity. But if the user says, I want a scoop of durian, and durian isn't one of the values I've explicitly given, if I have allowed automated expansion, it will see, okay, so this matches, but it's missing something. Maybe this something is actually of the type ice cream flavor. And so it'll expand your database of ice cream flavors to include durian. But as you can see with my counterpoint to why that is a little dangerous is that it's looking for anything, right? If I said I want a scoop of Kevin or I want a scoop of poop even, like it would just add that to its idea of what an ice cream flavor is. Defining synonyms, pretty straightforward there. A cool feature is that with the defined synonyms, it retains what the user originally said as well. So if I did say cocoa as my ice cream flavor, but it matched that to being chocolate, I do still have the option to use the word cocoa in the future as opposed to just using chocolate. So that's it for what entities are. Entities, you can manually add them in this kind of view, or you could actually just upload a CSV file, which is really useful. If you just grabbed a giant database of whatever it is, you can really easily import those in. And that's it for entities, and that's it for my explanation thus far of intents, contexts, and entities. And I'm hoping that I can give you guys a better understanding of how this all comes into play by making a little demo. We'll make an ice cream salesperson to apply all the things we've talked about thus far. But at this point, any questions about the topics I covered thus far of intents, contexts, entities? Cool. Let me just change this to that. So, this is the DialogFlow user interface. All you need to use DialogFlow.
Could you command plus it?
Yep. All you need to use DialogFlow is a Google account, entirely free. Command +1 too many times. So create an agent is where you'd start off. We are going to create an ice cream helper. Okay, ice cream helper. It associates the Google project with it. They're releasing a new API. That's in the beta right now. That's the one that's going to primarily be used for enterprise. I'm not familiar with the API yet, but they're giving more information within each of the messages that comes out. So, yeah, haven't played around with that yet, but should be relatively straightforward and only help. So we'll create this ice cream helper. And as mentioned, you can use multiple languages for your agent. They have localization for DialogFlow in, I think something to the tune of like 30 different languages, and that includes full translations of their entire entities, which is nice. So it starts off with your default fallback intent, which are just nice pre-populated lines of, I didn't say that again, or whatnot. But you also get your default welcome intent. So this intent is called on your Google Home or whatever device you're using when it opens up the application. This is the one that it looks for. It's kind of like your main in a Java file. It's the initiating statement. And you can change that. That's a little bit more than we want to go into right now. So this is our default welcome, so we'll use this. So we're able to give it a text response to how we deal with this. For the sake of this one, we're just going to be doing a pretty straightforward text response, but within this field, you can do rich custom text responses for a variety of different applications that DialogFlow integrates into, such as Facebook Messenger. With Facebook Messenger, you can serve up a lot of really cool stuff. You can actually just put in if you know your way around the Facebook API, you can just straight put in your code here that you want to respond with, or you could use what they've already given you, which is you could give it like cards or carousel or what are known as quick replies, which are just buttons. So really useful that they've taken care of that. On that note, I don't think I explained this earlier, but with DialogFlow, one of the reasons it's so easy to use is because they've taken care of integrations into platforms like Facebook Messenger. I can deploy to any of these messaging platforms with a toggle of a switch and a copy and paste of a webhook or whatnot onto Facebook Messenger, creating a Slack bot, creating a Twilio texting messaging application. So they've taken a lot of work off of your hands if you're just trying to make something simple. You don't even need any technical knowledge to deploy an application from beginning to end to Facebook Messenger. So let's think up a greeting. We will say, hello, welcome to, what should our ice cream shop be called? The Ice Scoop Emporium, I think. Sounds pretty cool, if I can spell that. What can I get for you today? So I'm going to use a lot of contexts because I think that contexts are very valuable in that it gives you more control over guiding how the conversation goes. So I'm pretty liberal on how many contexts I use. I don't like the idea of having no input context on something. I've pretty much, when I've developed an application with DialogFlow, I have no intents other than my welcome intent that have no input context, because I never want those to get matched, right? Outside of where they're supposed to be getting matched. So that's how you solve issues like that. Yeah. So input context, we don't need one here, but we can come up with an output context. So what have we done here? Well, we asked them, what can I get for you today? So a natural output context there would be, well, where are we in the flow of the conversation? And where we are now is we have prompted order. That's what we did. We asked them, what can I get you? And so our next logical response in this context should be a response to, ideally, an order that they've given us. So each context has a lifespan associated with it. That lifespan, 5, is represented in for the next 5 messages that I receive. I'll be in this context. You could set that to any number, arbitrary, or you could just give it nothing, 0, and it will delete it. Remove that context. I default just use 5 most of the time, depending on what it is. I could use shorter, or if it's something that I'm going to need for the rest of this conversation, like say, what's your name? I'll just give it like an arbitrary large number.
There's no way to define it.
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. -1 also leads to anytime you put anything 0 or under. Okay, so our next intent. So we've prompted their order, and we'll just start at 0 of order prompted. Or what are we doing here? We're actually getting their order. So we've already prompted the order, now we're going to get order. So the input context on this one is prompted order. And afterwards, we're going to kill that intent because, hey, now we're out of that. We've already got what their order is. And then we can, when we're done with this, we will have order, and we'll potentially have prompted payment. And now we can play with some user expressions. So what would an ice cream order need? It would need a flavor, a size. Let's just, for simplicity, just keep it to flavor and size. We could go cone versus no cone, a chocolate dip cone and whatnot, waffle cone, sprinkles, toppings. We're just going to keep it to, we need their size and we need what flavor they want. So keep it to one scoop. So let's give a bunch of examples of, could I get a small strawberry cone? Could large chocolate, one small vanilla in a cup with extra sprinkles, but we won't care about the sprinkles. Just an example of what someone might say. What else might someone say when they're ordering ice cream? Any other examples you'd throw in? So we could do that, but we could, I'm going to think of another way of dealing with that after this. So this is pretty linear. So we're expecting the perfect situation here, but as you said, they might not respond with an order. They might not. So that's why I would have another intent that would say, deal with a situation like that, where their next response was just something that didn't contain any entity or something like that, and have some examples. So you can really build it out to be as comprehensive as you want it to be. I guess this is a side note here, is that one thing I've learned and noticed with people when they're talking to things that are clearly robots or clearly voice technology, they understand that it's going to be pretty linear. They can't talk to it as well as if they were talking to a human, and they change the way they address things. I mean, this is just from seeing my non-technical father talking to Google Home, in that he really quickly realized he can't talk to it as if he's talking to me. He can't just say, like, do this, do that. He has to talk to it in a specific way so I can understand what he wants. And in the future, it's going to go away from that. DialogFlow isn't pushing you away from that. They're actually keeping you in that, and they want you to deal with these situations. But for the most part, the way you deal with people giving you what you don't want is to just say, I don't know, and hope they realize after a couple of times, after you hit the fallback intent. So we'll just use, we'll use one last user states example. I would like a chocolate cone. We need a size, a small chocolate cone. So you'll notice that it didn't pick up any entities here. It's because we haven't defined any. So let's define some entities before we move forward. So entities, we can create our entities. So we have two types of entities here. We have size. So we'll start with that. So we'll have three different size types: small, medium, large. We can define some synonyms: big, huge, giant, jumbo, 3 scoops, 2 scoops. Oh yeah, we can classify it like that as well, where if they say they want 2 scoops, we associate it to be a medium. Little kids, unintended. And then we wanted some flavors. So flavors, we're going to use the Canadian spelling because we are in Canada. We're going to allow automated expansion on flavors just to play around with that. Flavors, let's go with the defaults of chocolate, cocoa. What else? I don't think people would say cocoa, but we can try that. Any other? chalk without the O?
I would never say chocolate. I would say chocolate.
Okay, sounds good. Vanilla. Vanilla can be original, because some people think if vanilla is original, plain, that sounds good to me, and strawberry. No synonyms for strawberry. We can go, pink ice cream. Cool. Cool. Then we can go back to our get order intent, and then we can assign these. And if I made any further expressions, like I want a pink, a large pink, or 2 scoops of pink. Okay, didn't get the intended result there. I'm sure the demo gods weren't with me there, but it usually picks up what I'm trying to say in a given example. Because it knows that pink belongs to flavors, it would automatically highlight pink, and
It's probably just because it's a color, right?
maybe it's confused that it's a color instead. Potentially.
Does it have some default entities then?
So yeah,
Colours and-
so system entities, colors is one of them. There's a full list of them. There's actually a lot. Let's try it again. I want 2 scoops of strawberry. Okay, see, now I picked them up. Maybe it was just the demo. Maybe it was doing stuff behind the scenes still. So yeah, it picks up which entities were given in those expressions. It obviously doesn't do it retroactively on ones I've already given it, so I'll just throw those in. Entities first, yep. So find your entities first so it can pick them up. These things are both required for an order. So if we don't get those, we need to get those because we can't make an order without those. So by setting those parameters to be required, we can have our conversational agent naturally prompt the user to provide those. So I'm sorry, I didn't catch what flavor you wanted. We have strawberry,
That's very interesting.
chocolate, or vanilla. What would you like? And then size, we can go again, I'm sorry. I didn't quite get which size you wanted. We have small, medium, or large. What can I get you? Cool. So something like that. You just want to naturally prompt them saying, hey, this is something we need to move forward. And the reason I like to give them which options they have is because otherwise they're going to keep running into this prompt of, but I thought I told you, an ice cream flavor or a size, but if you don't get it, then you're just going to keep running into this prompt and it can get annoying. And there's no way yet to set, how many times you want to prompt them before you move on. That's just set by the context. When the context expires, then we're going to just move forward. And it can really screw up where you are in your decision tree.
What's the condition of matching that intent though if those parameters are present?
To whatever else is present. If one of the parameters was present, it's going to expect the other. If they said, I would like a cone, it's going to expect the other ones to be present. That's how I've found it works.
So it can possibly prompt you for both of them.
Yes.
It can match without having any of the parameters present.
Interesting. I haven't come into that situation before. We'll see how that goes by trying that out. Yeah. We'll see how it deals with how I like the cone. And then our text response, pretty generic and simple here. And then we'll prompt payment as well. Sure, 1, and then we can go 1 flavors, 1 size. Coming right up. How would you like to pay? Hey, cash or card? Cool. So let's try that out actually as to how that works. So they have a built-in testing console right here. You're able to see all the information as well. Wow, so hello hit the default. That's interesting. I would imagine that's in their default welcome intents, but Oh, right, because we took stuff out. Well, we didn't add user space. I don't recall taking those away, but hello, hi, what's up? We'll just keep those simple.
No wildcard.
So you can use sys.any. I think it's an @ sign. Oh, here, what I can do is just give it like a, and then I could, on this a, why can't I do this right now? Okay, so I can assign it. So this is one of the entities, and it would literally match against anything. So any word I give will match directly to this. Any is dangerous though. I mean, you can use it if you don't want to define an entity to just show that you need an entity there. But they can literally give you anything and can make things rough. So let's save and then try over. Hello. So let's try our bad example first of I want a cone. Okay, so it's prompting in order. It's prompting me for flavor. So let's say vanilla. Okay, so then it just sequentially prompts. Cool. So cool. We just handled one of the potential problems with it, but it seems to be smart enough to deal with that in a logical way. When you're testing, you're going to want to reset context between tests so that you can go back to square one. So we can just run through some further tests of hello, and then I want 2 scoops of, and then we said we have allowed automated expansion. So we can give it, as long as it's something in the same format. I noticed like if I said cookies and cream, because that's 3 words, it doesn't get it. It's not super intelligent on that. It'll just match something that looks the same. So if I said I want 2 scoops of mango, mango would match. So 1 medium mango. And as you'll notice, it said medium even though we said 2 scoops because it matches it. 2 scoops is a synonym of medium. But if I wanted to give them back exactly what they said, I could use that by saying size.original. And now it would say 2 scoops back. So I can retain what they said as well. Hello, I want 2 scoops of mango. Cool. But that doesn't logically, 2 scoops, like, that just makes it harder. So generally you use your defined entities. Okay, any questions at this point?
So you said mango here.
Yep.
And mango
Mango
isn't available.
Okay.
So you can respond to that with a prompt saying that the flavor is available, but it doesn't match.
So if I took away allow automated expansion, it would give them the prompt of.
What about if you have it but not right now?
So that's something you would deal with in your business logic on your server, because this is just here to process the conversation, right? But if you have things like maybe there's a limited availability, what you would do is you take in this JSON object of they want this, they want mango in medium, and in my backend I would check which flavor do they want mango, and then I would do something to check my inventory of mango, and then I would choose my output context accordingly. I would likely have another intent that says out of this flavor, and I would prompt them for another flavor, and I'd make it clear from there. So I would dynamically dispatch. So that's smarter, right?
So even without the expansion, it's still smart enough to take that mango as a flavor.
Here, or sorry, I don't quite get it.
So now you no longer.
That was an old example. So now let me do it with I want 2 scoops of mango, and it won't catch the flavor because
Is there any way for it to detect that mango was the flavor that you requested for them to go? We actually don't sell them, but we have chocolate, so that it's smart enough to come up with.
No, I don't think so.
How does it know that mango is not a size?
It doesn't.
Say,
I could say I want.
If it hits the 2 scoops, then I guess it knows that mango is there.
So if you just said I want mango.
If I had automated expansion on both, I'd probably run into some really weird situations. But again, this is kind of outside of how they intend for you to use this. And I guess it's a limited, like it's not a chatbot. It's a natural language processing website that people have used to make chatbots because they give you this framework to make your chatbots. But realistically, they want you to be using to support your application in being able to have conversational inputs. So we'll just finish this off in the next little bit by payment prompted. Payment prompted. And then we have this pretty simple cash, card. Let's define the entity first so that we don't have to go back. And we'll just have two different payment methods. Cash, dollar bills, or card, plastic, credit, debit, credit card, debit card. Cool. And then cash, credit. I'll be paying by debit card. I would like to pay using my credit card. Someday. And then prompted payment was the input context, and then we're done after this. We don't need to go through making the output context. Let's see, prompt. We take either cash or card here. Cool, and then
Both variations of this one.
so yeah, I just can put in a bunch and it would randomly choose one of them. Same with these text responses. I could define as many as I wanted. It just randomly chooses one.
You have set responses so that you can enter something like choose specific.
See, I wish you could, but you can't. Like, if they said mango, I wish I could say like, oh wow, you're feeling exotic. Here's one scoop of mango. Versus, no, you can't. But you can do that. That's where it comes into play that this isn't actually artificial intelligence and you need that server, because if you had a backend, you could do things like that very easily of, hey, if it's this one, then let's give them this text response. Because you can just send back, you choose what your text response is, right? If you have it in that architecture I showed earlier. Sorry. Cool. So, okay. I've received your payment through payment methods. So this is another really annoying thing about their user interface is that like if I type, like a lot of times I'll get stuck in a situation what forces me to just use this original or like have a hard time typing, because if you're here and you push, oh, maybe they fixed it, but if I want to like use that at the end of a line, right? It automatically, like pushing anything after you've pushed a period will make it force original. Cool. I've received your payment method through payment methods. Enjoy your ice cream. So that is a very simple chatbot. We can run through it, and then I'll show real quick as to how you would deploy it to your Google Home, because that's probably what you guys want to be doing, is playing with it on an actual Google Home device. So, hi. I want 3 scoops of vanilla. I'd like to pay by plastic. Cool. Cool. So, works pretty simply. We created 2 intents. We created 3 entities. So you can see how it'd be very easy to spin up something pretty simple. And then if you want to go deeper, you have that possibility of doing it. You can make a bunch of intents and manage your context in a way that you can control for variations. But again, there's no component of intelligence where it knows. It's entirely put in by the developer as to your business logic. That's that. Any questions on the actual making of chatbot, the intents, the entities? Okay, here is one last thing I'm going to show you about the entire creating your chatbot from the start of training. So you can look through all the conversations it's had, and you can see the intents it's matched inputs to and whatnot. And if it's doing things wrong, you can say that this is wrong, and it will learn from that. So it's a bit of manual training. So, hey, it matched this properly. Like, this is what I said, and I'm missing that. This is the context out. Like, I can just review, and I can see the unmatched cases of these red ones. Like, it didn't know what to do with that originally. And then you can assign it. So you can help train it manually. And you can see all the conversation history. And this came out in like August of analytics. So you do have full analytics. You can see number of sessions, number of queries, the flow charts actually. When you have like, I think one of the paid features is you can see full, like it can generate the trees that they went down, which would be really exciting to be able to see. And then I showed this earlier in the presentation of fulfillment, inline editor for building your backend out. My Mac is low, but that's fine. And then we will integrate to Google Assistant to end this demo off. So it's pretty damn easy. So you're just gonna literally hit the switch. You guys see everything still? Cool. And then if you wanted other intents to trigger it, as in like start it off how it starts, right now it just defaults to default welcome intent, but I could change which intent it starts with. And then I would make my draft all good. Then visit my actions on Google Console. Once I'm here, I want to ideally be able to test this on an actual Google Home device or any of my devices that are enabled with Google Assistant. It's slightly tedious on this front of getting it onto your actual Google Assistant. I could very easily test it in their simulator here, which not hard at all. So here's what I'm testing out, my actions on Google Drafts, and enabling my preview. Hopefully it doesn't break. And then I could just talk to my test app. And then, oh, it's matching my wrong, it's matched. So yeah, there's some work to be done on Google's end here because it's talking to my wrong test app because I have another test app. So this is actually, this is another chatbot that I had made that it's thinking I want to talk to right now. So obviously some stuff behind the scenes that has to get fixed for that to work. But you're able to, with your app, to test it on your actual devices. You can fill out all this information of your app, of its name, what it does, and whatnot. And then you can actually have it on your home by triggering it saying like, hey Google, talk to my ice cream assistant, and it will connect you to your ice cream assistant. In order to do so, you just give it all this information. Yeah, kind of just BS your way through that. Contact details, privacy and consent, make sure you're not targeting children. Yeah, cool. So that's an overview of how to use this. Facebook integration is easier because you don't have to deal with the Google side of things. Web demo is also cool if you want to show someone or have someone be able to play with it. You just enable it and they can just go to this and talk to your agent without having to set anything up. You can even give it a custom link, so ice cream demo, done. Facebook Messenger, pretty easy as well. You just, on your developers.facebook.com, you just get your token and your page access token, dump it in here, and you're good to go from there. They also have good documentation on that process because Facebook is something people integrate with a lot. And I think that's all I really have to teach at the moment until I learn some more stuff. Managing contexts, probably the hardest thing of this. Future improvements for DialogFlow that I'd like them to put forth is better context management. Right now, there's no way for me to see all the context available in my application. And I run into issues even just trying to get my context here because I can't just see a list of all of them. I have to kind of go in the dark. So the user interface needs some work, but I'm sure that in the next year, now that this is a Google product and something they're trying to make money off of with their premium enterprise version, it's only going to get better. Last little limitation of the free version is your number of requests per minute is limited. I think it's a pretty high number though. It's like 100 requests per minute or something, but it's unlimited with the paid version. Cool. That's all I have to say. I look forward to hopefully having you guys create something when you're bored. Feel free to ask me any questions or help debug stuff. It's nothing too crazy, and I think even if you're non-technical, you can do this. As you saw, we didn't have to write a single line of code to get this pretty basic, a pretty basic chatbot going. You can have a lot of fun with the technical side of things too by being able to take the information they're giving you and actually make a back-end call and do something cool using the information they're giving you. But for something simple like this, it's great. Another use case of like having your server in the middle is you can really manage your logs and your sessions better. You can entirely save conversations that people have had and retain old contexts, and then next time the user messages you, you can bring back all those contexts, things like that, to make your agent even smarter. Cool, that's all. Thanks so much for listening, guys. I recorded this entire thing. It's pretty long. I don't even see the length, but 56 minutes. It's long. It's a big file. We'll see how it goes. Cool. Thanks, guys.